This is a video Bellular made. It's called World of Warcraft has hit rock bottom. I can't believe it. I thought that last year and they just kept digging. Like, you always think that it's rock bottom and then they're like, wait a minute. We're not even halfway there. So let's take a look at this video. People want me to watch this. They linked this to me. I'll take a look. I'll watch it. See what it is. Here we go.
Welcome back. Last time we covered Mythic, but there's a problem with that. Most people don't play Mythic,
Most
so
people don't
what
care.
about Normal and Heroic, the raid tiers that most people actually do? Well, tier after tier, we've witnessed a huge decline in the raiding scene this expansion, reaching new lows across the board. The drop-off between each tier is unprecedented, almost halving for both Normal and Heroic since Castle Nathria, and as we
I think a big reason why this shit doesn't, like, people just leave and they don't raid is because, like, raiding, again, like, this is a hobby horse with me, but I'm gonna get on it again. Half of the time that you spend in a raid isn't doing the boss. Trash, respawns, fucking, running back, summoning people, buffing up, getting food buff, preparing for the fight. Like, if you take a pie graph and you look at, like, how big is the pizza slice for boss fighting, it's probably not even half. You look at Lost Ark or Final Fantasy, that's not the case. I don't think we want a boss rush for every raid, but it needs to be better than it is now. Like a lot of the, like, for example, having trash, I think, is probably, like, one of the bad things, but it depends on, like, how much trash you have. So, like, if it's just a few mobs, it's not a big deal, but, you know, take for example, like, going to Sausage. I don't know what the fuck is actual Gascoigne or fucking some bullshit, right? The boss in Sepulchre, you have to clear, like, 7 packs of trash. Why? How, like, I mean, does this really make the game better? Like, does it make the game better that you have to do this? Because I know some people think, like, oh, well, it makes the raid seem bigger. No, it doesn't. To me, it just makes my AFK break seem bigger. Because the moment that we start trash, I get knocked off the edge. Oops, sorry, I can't release. It's a bug. I'll be back in 5 minutes. And that's it. Like, I don't have fun with that shit at all. It's fucking annoying, man. And I think that's a big reason why people don't raid, is that it just takes too long. And the reason why it takes so long is not even the raid. It's just it's logistical challenges that the game implemented themselves. They put these in the game. I feel like a lot of people are raiding in Season 4. Yeah, I think a lot of people are, because you get a new reward, there's a lot of stuff going on. Of course that's what's going to happen. But I think that it's not going to be comparable to how many people are raiding at the start of Shadowlands, for example. Anyway, let's keep going with the video. You know, that meaningful trash effects later on to raids in my Final Fantasy rating. I think maybe like a few trash mobs and that's about it. Like, I think also it's mainly like summoning and, like, getting to bosses and running back from a wipe. Like, I don't want to have to run back. I just want to respawn in front of the boss. And I don't think that there's any objective value, and I don't even think that there's any perceived value that having to run back to the boss provides. I think it just sucks. So you want easy mode? No. What do you mean easy? I want the boss to be hard, not the time. What, do you always feel that way? Yeah, every time I wipe, I'm like, oh fuck, no, I have to waste my time again. Yeah, Ronnie builds character. That's what people say. It's just so, like, I swear to God, like, MMO players have such a fucking ego around having their time wasted by a fucking developer. It is amazing. They're like, well, this is a bad mechanic, but I can beat it because I'm good. No, it's just because nobody else gives a shit. People don't want to do it. Here we go.
talked about, Mythic hasn't fared much better either.
Yeah.
And while the percentage of guilds who manage to progress through and defeat the end boss on each difficulty has actually, I suppose this is the good thing, remained somewhat stable, that's only the percentage. The actual number of guilds has unfortunately fallen off a cliff, with 9.2 setting new record lows.
No surprise.
In our Mythic
there.
analysis, we covered the reasons that will overlap to the other modes, so
yeah.
hey, let's go do a speed run. General player sentiment and participation numbers being down. Less people playing WoW. People having had enough of the Shadowlands because...
I think also there's like a lot of other games out right now. You know, you've still got people playing Elden Ring. You've got the PoE League. There were some people that probably moved over to play a little bit of Tower of Fantasy. Obviously, Final Fantasy, Lost Ark. All of these other games are out. And like at the beginning of Shadowlands, there weren't really as many other games that were competing for the game, competing for people's time as much as there is now.
Of lore, gameplay, and overly fictitious design philosophies, a lack of regular game updates,
Wrath coming out,
the natural losses that happen from tier to tier within in most expansions, Sepulchre's unique difficulty, Season 3's shorter length, and external factors like Blizzard Entertainment's culture, and of course, migration to other video games. Today then, you are going to see that in addition to looking at guild participation, there are fantastic, fascinating things to look at with our parse numbers that show quite a story.
We love graphs.
Would you like to see modern versus classic? We've got...
Bro, Bellular's been watching my fucking stream. He has been... I knew for a fact, man. Because, wait till you guys see these fucking numbers. This is insane.
That for you too today. And it's honestly insane. Just like ignoring Masterworks, today's sponsor, who let everyday people like you and me diversify into the art market. Now, contemporary art has outpaced the S&P 500 for the last 25 years, by more than double, appreciating more than gold, real estate, and the S&P when inflation is high at a whopping 33% annually. Repeating, of course. And that's why I've partnered...
There's a lot of really rich people that buy art and then they resell it to like diversify assets for this reason. This is actually a legit thing. Now, I feel like this is kind of like a 1% advertisement though. Like, I mean, who else really is going to be doing this unless you drive a $100,000 car?
With Masterworks. Masterworks offer investments in that same contemporary art category. Now, importantly, this is not NFTs or anything like that. This is fractional shares of actual paintings. Like
fractional
Picasso,
shares?
Monet, Banksy.
What?
When Masterworks sells a painting that you've invested in, you get a potential return. And the 6 paintings that they've sold thus far have averaged a 29% net annual return.
That's crazy. That's a good idea. Wow. Damn, that's actually smart.
Through COVID, a bear market, and record high inflation. Now, of course, past performance is no guarantee of future results. But we all do know the general investing wisdom that we should have a diversified portfolio. That's what's ideal. And Masterworks make diversifying into art accessible and possible by everyday people. They are seeing record demand, but you can skip the waitlist by clicking the link down in the description.
Makes sense.
Thanks to Masterwork for sponsoring today's video. And with that said, let's go and take a look at normal mode. Normal, the most accessible form of organized raiding in WoW. While these numbers won't tell the whole story, they certainly do paint a rather bleak one for us. I should say, unfortunately, because I do actually want to see the game do well. Okay, so normal, the most approachable raid difficulty excluding LFR. You'd imagine it would be pretty stable, but it's actually the one that's experienced the largest decrease in participation ever during Shadowlands.
Well, it's obvious why. I mean, it's because normal's hard to do. Like, there's more mechanics. Like, normal back in, like, Legion was a joke. Like, you could do normal, it would just be, it'd be so easy. You didn't have to worry about anything. It was basically LFR, but you make the group yourself. And then over time, they've made the game harder. And then you have those players that normal mode was made for. Well, now they can't do it anymore. That's what happens. And I think it's like a trickle-down effect from them trying to make the other raids a lot harder.
Well, there were noticeable dips in Battle for Azeroth. They pale in comparison to the most recent few tiers. Looking back to Legion, you can see those numbers do look very stable, at least next to these 2 later expansions. What's changed since Legion, then? Well, I would posit that normal mode will correlate the most to just average gamer interest in WoW, average player numbers, because of normal mode's more broad appeal and accessibility.
Yeah, it's easier.
And I think that means the normal mode is probably a pretty damn good indication of overall player losses. While we don't know overall player losses, I think normal mode shows us.
I actually think normal mode is going to be probably more indicative. Like, if you're going to lose 50% of people, I bet 80% of those people are going to be from normal mode. And the reason why is because a lot of those casual players, like a hardcore Mythic Raider in WoW, it's very hard to get the hardcore Mythic WoW raiding experience from playing another game. Like, Final Fantasy provides a different experience, Lost Ark provides a different experience, but if you like what World of Warcraft Mythic Raiding has to offer, I don't think those other two games can completely fill that gap. So I think you're going to lose a lot of people that are the more casual players that don't care too much about that kind of stuff. They just want to do a fun raid that they enjoy with their friends. And they're the ones that are going to move over and do something in Lost Ark or Final Fantasy. Much more often, I would say. And I think obviously Heroic would be somewhere in the middle of those two.
That they are probably very large.
There's a lot of people.
The numbers then. Castle Nathria showed awesome promise. A total of 48,419 guilds defeated the first boss, while 35,509 of those managed to clear the rest of the raid on normal difficulty.
Well, it's also like, I mean, Castle Nathria, that's the one he's looking at right here, just so you guys can see it. Castle Nathria, a big factor there is that the end boss was really cool. Like, it was a really cool end boss. Everybody wanted to do it. And it also, like, on normal mode, it wasn't super, super, super fucking hard after, like, the first few days.
Difficulty, an 81.9% clear rate. That's pretty awesome when compared to BFA's Nyalotha. And that's where the optimism ends. It is actually only downhill from here on. Now, while the percentage of normal guilds that managed to clear Sylvanas came in at a stable 82%, the actual number of guilds that made up that percentage more than halved since Nathria, given the 48k.
You've got to keep in mind, like, Sanctum, like, at the beginning of Shadowlands, Sanctum of Domination was super, super, super late. That's actually why I moved over and started playing Final Fantasy. It's because there was no content in the game. I had just run out of things to do in the game. It's like, okay, I'm going to log on today. What do I want to do? Covenants are locked. I can't go do anything else. All the world content is just doing, you know, a PvP world quest, and then you log off. Who gives a fuck? Like, it was just awful. So I think that's a big reason, is that, like, you have to remember, like, the time frame between Castle Nathria and Sanctum of Domination was probably the longest time frame between the first and the second raid tier that, like, we've probably ever had. Maybe not, but I at least it felt that way to me. It was over a year, I thought. It was insane.
Ish guilds that managed to clear Nathria's first boss.
It wasn't a year.
Only 21,649 seemed to come back to clear the first boss of Sanctum.
Yeah.
That's a 55-ish% decrease in just one tier. So,
and yeah, it was also the lawsuit and everything like that too, right? Because, like, not only were a lot of people moving over to Final Fantasy at that time because of the content in Warcraft, but also, like, that lawsuit happened and, like, everybody was talking about how bad Blizzard was. So, like, that much of a decline makes a lot of sense whenever you put it into context of everything else.
Something that we'd actually never seen before. The next closest drop-off was back in BFA, another very controversial expansion which saw a 40% drop in normal, going from Uldir to Dazara lore.
Like Castle Nathria to Sanctum.
Sylvanas' numbers didn't fare much better either, also seeing a 55% decrease when compared to Denathrius. Okay, after this 55% decrease in normal guilds, surely Sepulchre could turn it around. I mean, compared to all previous tiers of Shadowlands, Sepulchre looked the most promising of all, right?
Of course, I mean, it's got to be better.
Alt-friendly features, no Korthia to grind, no Maw to grind, the return of tier sets, an exciting feature, and easy enough to obtain double legendaries. And of course, a chance to finally put an end to the Chuckler. Well, 9.2 almost certainly...
I think also, like, one of the factors of Sepulchre is that nobody cared about the outcome of the raid. Like, I only cared about it for like a fucking like some sick sense of being punished. Like, it was like masochism, the way that I cared about the raid tier. Like, at the end of it, I wanted it to be as bad as possible because I wanted to be punished as much as I could be for playing this fucking game. Like, nobody cared about the jailer. Who gives a fuck?
Another 9.1 style patch would have.
Morbid curiosity,
it did not manage to bring back enough players to see an increase in raid participation. This is the bit that's a little bit sad, because in fact, it was during Sepulchre that we saw even more record lows for guild participation. Among these new record lows was the normal guild clear percentage, dropping a staggering 68% from the previous average of 82% for Shadowlands thus far, meaning that this is the second lowest clear rate percentage recorded for normal since Legion, beating only by Nyalotha with 65.54%. So, long gone.
Keep in mind, with Nyalotha, in order to kill the last two bosses, you had to have your cloak, and you also had to have the Heart of Azeroth, right? I guess everybody had the Heart of Azeroth, but you had to have the cloak. There were a lot of people out there who did not have the cloak, or for some reason they weren't able to do it. So that's a big reason why Nyalotha was so much lower. Not to mention it was also a much longer raid. And alts, yeah, things like that. People didn't have the cloak on every character. So with Sepulchre being at 68%, you have to think like that's only comparatively a little bit better than a raid that if you didn't have a legendary item, you literally couldn't kill the last boss.
Are the glory days of Legion, where the average guild clear rate was 90%.
Yeah.
This is normal mode, though. What about Heroic? Surely the more dedicated players of the game will be in Heroic. Well, let's take a look.
I actually assume that Heroic will probably have like the highest completion rate of normal, Heroic, and Mythic, but maybe not.
Well, Heroic shows a similar story. Shadowlands saw the lowest ever percentage of guilds achieving ahead of the curve in most of its tiers, in addition to the lowest overall guild participation,
oh my God,
with the exception of the marvelously performing Castle Nathria. Digging into these numbers, we see the Nathria set a record in the number of guilds that started and finished a tier, but unfortunately this still translated into the lowest percentage seen for the number of guilds achieving ahead of the curve in recent history. Now, in a way that's not necessarily surprising though, because it actually follows the same trend that was seen during Uldir in BFA. Record high turnout for first boss kills, but a record low percentage of guilds actually making it through to that final boss. So,
so he's comparing the blue and the red.
Too much? I don't know, did Stone Legion generals and stuff kind of hold people back too long? I'm not sure, but I do.
Well, you've got to remember, like, Stone Legion generals on Heroic, like, it had, like, that chakram mechanic that, like, if you did it wrong, everybody died. Like, everybody around you died immediately. It was, like, an instantaneous, like, raid wipe mechanic that, like, melee players, random melee players, had to execute regularly throughout the entire duration of the fight. I'm sorry, but I think that's too hard of a Heroic mechanic. Like, not only do you have two random people that get assigned to do a mechanic, but you also have it to where if they don't do that mechanic, not only do they die, but everybody else around them dies too. That is a brutal fucking mechanic on Heroic.
Remember people considering Nathria to be like a proper good little challenge. Now, while Sanctum actually managed to see a slight increase in the percentage of guilds attaining curve, which I think does make sense when you think about the relative difficulty compared to Nathria, the actual number of guilds plummeted. It plummeted from 42,778 in Nathria to 20,386 for Sanctum. That's a 52% decrease. For last boss kills, it was a 51% decrease.
Yeah,
not only does the percentage decrease set a new record, but the number of guilds that managed to defeat Heroic Sylvanas at that time was the lowest ever for a Heroic end boss. The very least since Night.
That's crazy that it's worse than Gahoon Heroic. I remember doing Gahoon Heroic and it was fucking brutal. Yeah, this mechanic's gone in Season 4. That's good. Yeah, I think so. And it's because Sepulchre's dogshit raid expansion's not alt-friendly. I mean, like, I don't think that's the only... but, like, again, being alt-friendly, I think, matters. Was Legion alt-friendly? I feel like Legion was less alt-friendly than fucking, like, whatever this one is, Shadowlands was. I feel like Legion was substantially less alt-friendly. It's just that it was more fun to play, so people didn't care about playing their alts. I think that's what the difference was. And also, the heroic raids were easier. Straight up, it was a lot easier to do heroic Antorus than it is to do heroic Sepulchre.
Hold. Now, if you think that Sanctum and Sylvanas, you think that's the end of our record lows for Shadowlands, then you are gravely wrong. Although Sepulchre, while not perfect, was much more player-friendly when compared to previous tiers, both for new/alt players and engaged raiders, heroic raid participation hit rock bottom. Only 13,279 guilds came back to clear just the first boss, compared to 20,386 for Sanctum. Sanctum itself...
I'm kind of surprised to see, Sepulchre having really low numbers, not really a big surprise. I'm surprised to see Eternal Palace. Like, I thought 8.2 and Ashara's Eternal Palace, I thought that was a good raid tier. Like, I had fun raiding that tier. It was good. I'm surprised that it was just so low. And also that Nilotha was such a massive improvement over it, even. That's crazy. Maybe it's just that, like, Ashara was really hard. That's a good point.
Of course, was also a massive decline from Nathria.
Yeah.
When we go to the last boss figures, though, reality hits you. Only 8,010 guilds cleared Heroic Jailer. I mean, wow. While that's not too much lower than Heroic Sylvanas, these numbers are a huge cause for concern. Literally, where did everyone go? So,
I wonder.
Almost 2/3 of the guilds that managed to defeat Heroic Denathrius at the first tier of the expansion had left by the end of Sepulchre. Okay, some may have
Well, they also probably stopped raiding because, like, again, you can get the same gear from raiding, you can get the same gear from the raid in Mythic Plus in most cases, or in PvP. And, like, you only get marginally worse stats in PvP. So it's like, do you really want to go and put all this effort into it in order to get something that has one secondary stat better? Like, how many people care about that? Basically fucking nobody, because what are you even going to use that gear for other than raiding? You see kind of what I'm saying? Is like, that's a big fucking factor. And I think that's why a lot of people also stopped raiding, is because there are other, better, more efficient alternatives of getting gear. And the reason why you saw more heroic guilds completing it too is like tier sets. People wanted to get tier sets. But you don't have to raid to get the tier set. You can just do the Catalyst Converter. So that's not even necessary. And Range Just Dead can get the same animal from Mythic Plus with 0 time commitment. Yeah, I mean, like, again, I think that the raids now are just, they're so hard that why would somebody invest 4 hours on a commitment level time? You know, it's not like, oh, I just go and I do the raid whenever I want. You know, you show up at Tuesday at 8 p.m. to raid. And so if you have something else planned for Tuesday, well, you've got to not do that because you planned on raiding. I feel like that's just, like, if somebody is putting in that much time and effort, and then they log into the raid, and they're filled with time-wasting mechanics and one-shot mechanics that kill the whole raid, and then you have to run all the way back every single time that happens, and, like, yeah, maybe you usually have wipe protection, but, like, then it takes time to do the wipe protection. You have to rebuff, get food buff, and everything like that, augment rune. It's like, ah, fuck. Like, think about how much time this is taking.
A bit late in or whatever, but you get the point here.
No wonder people aren't doing it.
Attrition is massive. Alarm bells surely must be ringing throughout Blizzard HQ. Okay, let's go and be productive. What caused this? And with Dragonflight, can we expect to see similar issues?
That looks cool.
Well, while not everything here was literally required, much of it was desirable for performance, and it did help to set a negative tone for this expansion.
What's that?
Okay, 9.0. daily maw grinding, including daily quests,
True.
killing all rares, and the Eye of the Jailer mechanic, causing people to have to follow optimized routes.
Yeah.
This was all to get random conduit upgrade items and gem sockets, which all required Stygia. Conduit upgrades were random, starting at your lowest item level, and they could upgrade conduits that your spec isn't using. It's one of the most hostile player design decisions ever made. Torghast, of course, had to be ground out for legendaries, and this was the much worse than current original Torghast. Then we had the gold cost for those legendaries, pushing many people towards the WoW token. Okay, patch 9.1, time for it all to get... no, not good.
You thought that was bad. Well, guess what? Yeah, it got even worse. Exactly. How did Blizzard think people would find this fun? It's because Blizzard didn't listen to the players. And they're doing it again now with Dragonflight and Dragon Riding. Like, I'll tell you one thing, and this might sound stupid, but if they release Dragonflight without the buff to soar, and with no Dragon Riding out in the open world, I will have substantially less expectations for the entire expansion. Because I don't view this as a make it or break it feature, but I do view it as a mining canary. That if this is not something you're willing to compromise on and you can't see the player perspective for this, you don't understand the game. You fundamentally don't understand how the game works, how the game's played, how people consume content, and what people like doing. They just don't get it. So if you hold your ground on this, the only person that would do that is somebody who fundamentally misunderstands the way the game is played.
You have the insane Korthia grind of people killing every single rare, looting every single chest, and killing the max amount of relic dropping creatures, and doing all the quests every day for almost a month. That's what the Mythic Raiders, and maybe some of the more trying hard heroic raiders, felt they needed to do. That, of course, was to get revered and exalted with the Korthia faction so you could get gem sockets and conduit upgrades.
Yeah.
Stygian Embers then had to be farmed out for your shard upgrades, and of course you had to farm and pray for shard gear. You also had to farm Torghast for cinders, and of course shard gear would compete with legendary slots, meaning it was an utter hellscape of expensive recrafting. Patch 9...
So, I remember whenever the Shards of Domination came out, and I realized that they were only going to be in one tier, I never even learned the system. I have no idea how they work, I have no idea how they're upgraded, I have no idea about anything about them. I have no clue and I don't care. I don't want to know. It doesn't matter because it just happened and now it's gone. I think that's the way, that's the way a lot of people felt about it. Yeah, that's also whenever I took a break from the game and I was playing a lot more Final Fantasy, as I said. I think so. Now, again, I think one of the big problems is the fact that a lot of those systems had, like, no alt-friendly features to them. Like, for example, if you were able to get conduits, and like right now in Warcraft, like imagine if, like, how many of you guys got the 278 conduit item that like learns all of your conduits to 278? Like, I remember I got it because I got 2.4K, a bunch of other people, a lot of people have it now, right? Why is that not account-wide? Why not just make every conduit for every class that you play and every character you play 278? Bro, you hit 2400. You're a fucking gladiator. What, do you have to farm your conduits for your alt again? Holy shit. Why? It is now. So it is? Wait, it's account-wide now. Is that right? Not only that, but you're earning an alt, you have to do Zereth Mortis campaign to even buy them. They changed it. Good. It's 10k flux now. Why? That's the thing, is like a lot of the, like, why? Why is it why not just immediately have it on your character? Why not just immediately learn it to your character? Why do we have to have this arbitrary time-wasting mechanism to just make people play the game more? Because I think that that's not what it does. Like, whenever, like, for example, like, I would play my DK more. I would play World of Warcraft more if I could just seamlessly play another character. But I can't do that because there's so many secondary systems that don't have good account-wide functionality. Meanwhile, in Lost Ark or Final Fantasy, if I want to play another character, I just click a button. I just log out and log back in. Like, why do I have to do all of these extra? Why do I have to jump through all of these hoops? And whenever I get to the hoops, I just say, fuck it, I'm tired. I don't want to do it. That's it. Why is Blizzard so anti-player with WoW? They're not anti-player, they're anti-alt. I don't understand. I think that the reason why is because some people at Blizzard, and I think also some players that are fans of Warcraft, have this weird idea, and it's like this predisposition that any reward in the game has to cost something, and anytime that you give a player an item, they have to earn that item by doing something else. And like, they have like this very antiquated view on how the game should reward players. And because of that, everything has to have some arbitrary time-wasting mechanism cost. Like, oh, it only takes an hour, it doesn't even matter. Well, if it only takes an hour and it doesn't even matter, why does it take an hour? Has anybody ever thought of this? Yeah, if it's so easy and nobody cares, then why does it exist? But anyway, yeah, like what I'm saying is like a lot of the game, and this is kind of like what happens, is like I'll talk about this whenever I'm streaming WoW. And there'll be a lot of people that just go and they say like, oh, so you just want them to just give everything to everybody, and, well, like, cause they just, if you get this, I mean, fuck, you might as well just give them the whole game. Might as well just get them all the loot. We give them the vendor where you buy like a fucking like the gear from the vendor, and it's like free, cause like, I mean, you make people, they don't have to, like, why can't you just farm it out? Like, it's just the dumb fucks that have, like, they've only played World of Warcraft. They've never tried any other game. They don't see how there are literally half a dozen other games that compete with World of Warcraft that don't have these arbitrary time restrictions and these arbitrary time-wasting mechanisms, and they're doing just fine. It's like a WoW brain. Like, they only play WoW, so they look at everything in the game only in the lens of WoW. Not anything else. Not like what it could be. Nothing abstract at all.
0.2 was a lot better, but it still had some issues. Bosses were tuned a lot higher than what players had previously been used to, with many bosses including punishing binary pass-fail mechanics that hindered progress. Then tier sets and double legendaries, those were essentially mandatory for the later bosses, which was troublesome in terms of tuning. Double legendaries were gated behind a quest that took weeks to complete. Of course, that was, after the raid was open. And then the creation catalyst opened on week 8, which many people, Blizzard themselves actually, think was too late. Ouch. I think you can see how player friction was a staple of this expansion.
Well, keep in mind, Bellular, this is artificial player friction. Because player friction is like whenever you join a group and you get kicked out because they want to bring in their friend. Or you have a bad experience with a group and you keep wiping and then so you leave or they kick you out. Like, that's player friction. Or like there's like a bunch of people trying to farm a mob. That's what it is. This is not what it is. It's not player friction. It's just bullshit that they added into the game for no fucking reason. And also, like, again, the creation catalyst should have been in the game on the first day. And you should have been able to just do one a week. It's like, what would that have done? Like, so, like, what's the logic? Oh, well, after people get their tier set, they're going to quit the game? Oh, well, I guess... Isn't that a problem in itself? Like, you know what I mean? Like, isn't that kind of like, I don't know, if that's the problem, then maybe you should look at that and not trying to make it harder for people to get the tier set. Perception is everything now. How well balanced something is on paper. Waste perceived content, so it dictates quality and enjoyment. Yeah, I think so. And that's what happens. It's like people always perceive things as being harder or easier, and a lot of those opinions are crafted by high-end players. You're right about that. But I think also, like, it does come down to individual, like, itemized minutes and hours spent in the game. And I think that if you look at the itemized minutes and hours spent in the game, there's a lot of wasted time.
And was not helpful. These designs encouraged, or designed anyway, to encourage people to play more aspects of the game instead. And while we cannot literally causally prove this in a scientifically rigorous way, they do certainly correlate with data that shows diminishing player counts, which then you can mix in with data that, yes, is anecdotal, but generally has been quite large and persistent about the game being fictitious. Of course, there are some Mythic-specific aspects as well, and you can check out our Mythic video for that. But next, I want to talk about parse counts, because I did tease a bit of a classic versus modern thing, and, well, honestly, shit's insane.
Yeah, the Warcraft log differences between heroic and, between normal and, retail and classic are insane. You guys are going to see this.
Alright, let's get to the fun. So one of the things with these Warcraft logs numbers is they actually don't entirely match up with the guild participation peaks and dips, so there's not necessarily a correlation. For example, there was a peak in guild raid participation in Uldir, but the number of parses recorded on Warcraft logs saw a decline. So just interesting quirks of data.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing private
There could be many
logs
other
then.
quirks of data here,
I remember
which,
that.
to be honest, was in the original version of the script, but we'd be going on for like 5 minutes. So I'm just going to rocket you through to the big comparison that people have been making, and that is classic versus retail parse
here we
counts. So, while Warcraft logs parses in classic TBC looked to have quite a slow start, albeit still having over 1.6 million parses in the first phase, things really started to pick up during the later phases.
Yeah.
During phase 2.5, when Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep were released into the game, Warcraft logs saw a total of 8 million parses be recorded.
That's a lot.
In the following phase then, when Mount Hyjal and Black Temple were added to the game, this number soared to 15.4 million.
Isn't that crazy that, like, TBC, it seems like it actually, it doubled in raiding population from SSC to Tier 6? That's nuts. How? What the fuck? Do you want to know why? It's because the game is not ridiculously punishingly hard. You just go in there and you can, you do it. It's not that bad. It's easy. I think that's the big reason. The raids are fun. It's fun to do.
Now compare this to current retail, where the last few tiers have barely broken 2 million, and you do begin to ask yourself just how many people are actually playing classic TBC when compared to retail. It's hard to say. Well, classic TBC has seen some dips following phase 3. It still managed to record over 2.7 million for phase 3.5 to 4 during the Zolaman release, and over 9.5 million parses in phase 5, which is when Sunwell Plateau was added.
That's a lot.
Now, the last time that retail WoW exceeded 9 million parses across all difficulties of a given tier on Warcraft logs was back during Legion in both Nighthold and Tomb of Sargeras, which had 14.4 million and 9.3 million parses recorded respectively. The closest that we've seen to those figures was during BFA's final raid, Nyalotha, and Shadowlands' first, Castle Nathria, each recording between 8.1 and 8.
And also, I will say that at the beginning of Shadowlands, it was generally fun to play my warrior, and at the end of BFA, it was generally fun to play my warrior. I think that there's also a huge correlation between the game being fun to play and people playing the game. Like, if it feels good to play your class, you can do a bunch of cool, crazy shit, then you're going to have a lot of people playing it.
3 million parses. Now, let's not forget, though, that these numbers don't entirely correlate to the active, to the number of active players or guild participation figures. It's literally just a parse count. But, generally, if more people are playing, you would imagine that there would be more parses. Another little interesting factoid, too, is classic TBC is absolutely humongous in China. I suspect in a way that modern WoW isn't. Of course, it's an absolutely ginormous
I've heard
country,
the same thing.
So you would imagine that a lot of them would be inflating up the classic TBC numbers in a way where they wouldn't exactly be impacting the modern game numbers. Overall, then, if you want my opinion in this, I've got to say, I think it's fairly simple, right? And it could actually be worse than this data shows. I know that might sound mad to you, but...
in my opinion, I think it's just because the game's not fun to play whenever you have to constantly wait for the dumbest person in the raid to figure it out. Like, I don't know. It's not fun. It's fucking annoying. And I bet, like, one of the reasons why Sunwell was that much lower, how many of you guys did Sunwell back in the day? Whenever you had some fucking dumbass that, like, remember you would get conflag on the Twin Eridar, and somebody would not move out. All they had to do was move, and they wouldn't do it, and it would kill the whole group, and it's a fucking wipe. I remember this shit happened. I watched videos of it on Warcraft, Warcraft movies. People were fucking furious. Still happens. Still fucking happens. Sunwell has a lot more, like, individual point of failure things that can happen that wipe the entire raid. That's one of the big differences between Sunwell and BT and Hyjal. Like, for example, like in Hyjal, like, oh, you don't use Tears of the Goddess at the right time on Archimonde? Well, you're dead. That's too bad. If you, let's see. You attack the second phase of Reliquary of Souls. You attack it too much with the reflect damage, well, you're dead. Your character's dead. That's it. Right? Or like somebody doesn't do the interrupt, well, then you know exactly whose fault it is. You see kind of what I'm saying here? Is like these kinds of things happen, and that's how it gets caused. Yeah, you had Terran Gorfiend. You did. And Terran Gorfiend was a headache because of that exact thing.
Remember that slide from the FF14 developers about, you know, kind of the quiet majority will just sort of wander away and lose interest in your game first before you start to hear the vocal people? So we were using guild kills. Now, guilds are going to be more active players, right?
Guilds will be more resistant to trends because people are tied to the game with something that is it's external from the game. It's like they have a group of friends that play the game, so that's why.
Guild player is probably going to be more sticky, more likely to stay around because they got friends to play with.
It's like what I said with
guild numbers falling is absolutely terrifying.
RP realms.
But another thing that's really terrifying to me is all the people who aren't in a guild and maybe just pug and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What are the silent losses of modern World of Warcraft? I mean, we don't really have a way to quantify that. I do think the game is healthiest when our guild numbers are going up, though. Now,
I think that, so like a really great example of this was at the end of Wrath. I remember I was on Kel'Thuzad server at the end of Wrath. Kel'Thuzad was like known for being the asshole server. Like if you were on Kel'Thuzad, people would automatically assume you were a dickhead, and I knew that, and I did my best to uphold our reputation as much as we could. The fact is, there were so many people on KT back then. Everybody was playing on the server. Like, there were millions of, not millions, it was like probably dozens, probably hundreds of ICC 25-man heroic raids going on. Like, whether it's GDKP or Rolls or Loot Council or some shit, pugs going on constantly in Wrath. And then whenever Cataclysm came out, bro, like, those raids were fucking hard. You couldn't pug them anymore. Like, going from, like, I don't know, like, face rolling on Lord Marogar to doing Omnitron Defense Squad. Fuck that. And people quit. That's, I think, a huge reason why people quit is like, oh, I can't pug anymore. I can't play the game. I have to be in a guild. I don't have time for a guild. That's what happened. It was just too fucking hard.
Now, I did say I would talk about Dragonflight in the context of today's video because my mission here is to see how WoW is actually performing. It's not to shit on it.
That's whenever people start quitting.
It's not to tell people not to play it. It's to see what's actually happened.
Yeah.
And then we got to talk about Dragonflight. And this is potentially where news could get a bit better for us.
Okay.
When talking about the reasons, at least the hypothesized reasons for these declines, it was basically all player friction, right? Now, when I look at the current design of Dragonflight, it seems to not only be more alt-friendly than Shadowlands, it seems to be radically more alt-friendly than Shadowlands.
It should be.
The borrowed power stuff isn't there. That means that at a fundamental level, to be able to just hop into this endgame instanced content, all you'll really need to do is to make your character, level them up, fill out their talents, and get gear.
That's all it should be. I am totally okay with like end game progression systems like corruption, like the essences in BFA. I think those are good. But what I don't think is good is having to do them twice. I think that it feels really good personally for me. I'm speaking from my personal experience. It felt really good. Within Torghast, I would level up my tower knowledge and I would get better and I would get the perks and I'd get more of them every week. But I will never do that on an alt. I will never fucking do that on an alt ever. And that's what the difference is. I think it was cool to do the first time, to have something to level up, to feel good, that you can log on and work at it every single week and make progress on it off of raid time just on your own. I think that's cool. But having to do that on more than one character is too much.
It really doesn't seem like there'll be a whole bunch of external bullshit to grind. And the idea
that's a
of
good
the creation
thing.
catalyst is something that Blizzard said they would like to continue going forward, but that they would unlock it a bit earlier in the tier as compared to the creation catalyst on week.
I don't see why they don't just unlock it at the beginning. Like, why? Or like the week after. Like, why are we waiting 4 weeks, 3 weeks, 2 weeks, 5 weeks? Why? Just to make it take longer? For what reason? People just want to get their tier sets. Like, it really sucks at the beginning of a patch, right? It really, really sucks whenever, like, somebody gets their tier set bonus and you don't. And you feel like shit. I remember this has happened to me many, many times. And then, like, it can create, like, a fucking, like a domino effect. Like, why not just let people get their tier sets?
Gate. So these things do actually give me quite a strong degree of hope for the next expansion. Ultimately, with Shadowlands, I think we see that where a lot of things were very powerful in the Legion expansion, I think we see that Battle for Azeroth and Shadowlands misunderstood the role of friction, I suppose is a way to put it, or coercement into doing content in the overall design of World of Warcraft, and they misjudged that to the degree that a lot of people felt pushed away from the game.
Yeah.
At least from my own personal perspective, it's absolutely no surprise that I'm having a blast in Season 4 as compared to prior seasons of the game. Season 4, a time where the game feels a lot less fictitious, a lot more opened up, and I feel like I'm more able to just hop into some content and have
You can
fun.
do what you want.
Pretty interesting.
Like, you don't want to put barriers in front of people being able to play the game the way they want. Like, this is not some weird cock and ball torture thing. Nobody wants this.
Situation. Hopefully Blizzard will have learned the lessons required to not reproduce these issues and these large declines again, because ultimately I think we would all like World of Warcraft to be really strong and healthy.
It'd be great.
Could you imagine a time where World of Warcraft has more frequent patches, as Ian has said they intend to do, and we're in a situation where, if you're anything like me, every 4 months you get a fantastic FF14 patch, maybe every 3 or 4 months you get you get a WoW patch, maybe a fantastic one even. As a player of MMORPGs who really wants to like both games, that is an absolute dream scenario. And I suppose, while I definitely would say don't pre-order, I will say, here's to hoping that that good future comes to pass. So that's it.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, obviously a lot of people, even this is true with a lot of Final Fantasy players, as many of them are current WoW players. There's a huge amount of people that just play whichever game has new content, whether that's Final Fantasy or WoW. So, like, a lot of those people are like, yeah, I hope WoW's good because I play WoW. Well, I thought you played Final Fantasy. Yeah, I do. You just play both games, right? It's not that big of a deal. Yeah, I play both and enjoy both. Yeah, exactly. And so that's what many people do. And I think also, like, there's other games too. Like, I mean, people might do WoW and League, or, Final Fantasy and Lost Ark or something like that. Most people, I think, right now are playing more than one game.
For me today, a thank you to Masterworks for sponsoring today's video. If you would like to skip their waitlist, the link is down below. And thanks to you for watching.
This is a good video. I love graphs.
If you have
we love graphs.
Personal story to shed a human light, a human angle to the decreases we've seen, do share it down below. Because this isn't just
Well, I'll give my personal story. This was in BFA. My mom farmed the Draenor flying. And then she farmed Legion flying. And they had her do it again for BFA, and she said, nope, I'm done. I already did this. I don't want to do it again. It's just a arbitrary amount of hoops for me to jump through, and I'm done with it. Stop making people do the same stupid shit over and over and over. It's tiresome.
It's going down. This is groups of friends breaking up, groups of friends wandering off to new places. I'm sure there's a lot of stories in that. I'm sure the sort of stories that
she never came back to the game either.
Interesting to hear. Okay.
After that, she just took a break, stopped playing.
See you next time.
And like, keep in mind, like, her taking a break and stop playing and not playing, she had played WoW at that point since vanilla WoW. She was level 60 in vanilla WoW. And she quit during BFA. Think about that. That's what it was. Yeah, she played all the way through WoD. She played all the way through Legion. And she said, fuck that, I'm done. That's what it was. Damn shame. Yeah, I know, exactly. And you're going to do a Reddit recap, posted something on New Tab. I might look at that. I was going to look at... Let me link the Bellular video. I think this was a very good video. I liked it a lot. Again, yeah, she mentioned after that, yeah, she talked about coming back to the game, but then it just never really happened. That's about it. And yeah, I mean, I think this was pretty good video. I liked it a lot, and I thought it went, you know, it covered a lot of things that were important. People play more than one game. Not many games are so complete in the user size as they used to be. Well, I think there's also more competition now. That's another big factor. And yeah, I hope that Blizzard tries to make the game fun again. And like, stop thinking about what, you know, like trying to put barriers in front of players. Just let people play the game and do what they want in the game whenever they log on. Stop trying to make people do something. Stop trying to put some wall in the way that they have to climb over, break through, or tunnel underneath. Stop doing it. Just let people play the fucking game.